Party people, welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, the actual play RPG podcast where the gaming table is always set for two. I'm your host as always, Jeff Stormer. This week I am joined by Pranks Paul for a two-player GM-less game of Last Fleet. Last Fleet is a Powered by the Apocalypse game inspired by shows like Battlestar Galactica and movies like Star Wars The Force Awakens, about the crew of a small fleet of ships deep in space, battling an otherworldly menace that challenges them from without and from within. It's very, very cool. I dug it a ton. I thought it was a blast to play. I can't wait for you to hear it. Last Fleet is currently on Kickstarter. It's about in its last week of funding. You should absolutely go check that out. I can't recommend it enough. I really think it's a great game, and I would love to see it made happen, and I'd love to see it. Frankly, I'd love to have a copy for myself. You can find more information about Last Fleet and its Kickstarter in the show notes. Pranks is one of the hosts of Never Tell Me the Pods, which is my favorite Star Wars podcast on the internet, and is one of the players and principal creators behind Autonomic, which is, in my humble opinion, one of the best actual play shows on the scene today. It is an all-ages, family-friendly actual play in an original fantasy setting that is beautiful and breathtaking. I can't recommend it enough. Please go into the show notes. Please go to autonomicpodcast.com and check that out. It is, I'm gushing. I am gushing about it because I think it's very, very good. Anyway, before we dive in, real quick, a thank you to Rob Anderson, our newest backer on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting not just the podcasts I create, but the games I make, all the community stuff I do, all of that kind of stuff. It means a ton that you are here and you are supporting the show. Side note, Rob and I played in the International Podcasting Month game of Worldwide Wrestling last summer, and it was a hell of a game. I'm going to link it in the show notes. You should check it out, especially if you like professional wrestling. It was seriously such a good game, and I can't recommend it enough. And with all that said, let's throw it over to me in the past so that he can get started with the show. Take it past me. Thanks, future me. This week, I am so excited to be sitting down with Pranks Paul. Pranks, thank you so much for coming on Party of One.
Jeff, really happy to be here, and I'm not just saying that. I've been looking forward to this all weekend, so.
Oh my god, I have been as well, so thank you so much. I'm so excited. So real quick, at the top of the show, before we get into our game, which we've already done some work for, and I'm already, extremely hyped for, why don't you take a moment and let the listeners at home know about all the stuff you've got going on that you might want them to know about?
Absolutely. So I'm going to see Cats later, so that's something.
God, I'm jealous. I'm excited for you.
So my life will probably change right after this is recorded. But as far as stuff that I've got going on, I think the show that people might know me most from is Never Tell Me the Pods, which is a Star Wars discussion show that I run with three of my friends, including Kat Cool, James D'Amato, and Johnny O'Mara. And you may have heard a little low-budget indie film just came out, so we've pretty much been losing our mind over that and trying to figure out the end of the saga and what this all looks like. So if you want more of a discussion-style flavor, check out Never Tell Me the Pods. My other big project is something called Autonomic, and Autonomic is it's a labor of love for me and Kat. There aren't many fantasy shows that are aimed at children, and there are even fewer that have a non-Western background and tradition. So the world of Autonomic is a unique setting created by myself and Kat that's based on Indian and Ecuadorian mythology. And it's aimed at children, but it's family-friendly, so all ages can listen to it. And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there and of the system and the world. And I highly encourage you to check that out if you want to pick up another fun actual play. Autonomic is something that dominates my thoughts so much that it's almost hard to talk about. Chances are, if I'm not,
I get it.
Yeah. So chances are, if I'm not thinking about something like Star Wars or the Muppets or something else, I'm probably thinking about Autonomic. So that should give you some indication of how much I think about this new thing. So I guess you can find me on Twitter at RogueTLDR. And then you can just find Autonomic or Never Tell Me the Pods pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts. I believe possibly Stitcher accepted. We're still getting that figured out, but yeah.
One, big mood. The biggest mood.
Yeah.
Two, Autonomic is lovely. I've been listening to it, and it makes me extremely happy. The character work on it is beautiful, and the world building, it has. And I say this as someone that also loves Star Wars. It has the same kind of lived-in quality that, is what draws me to Star Wars. At its best, it has that kind of lived-in quality where, all of this wonderful world-building is happening, but it's happening in this way that is just, it's here. It's not all right, now we're going to dig into this thing. It's just well, this is the thing that is happening now. And it excites me when that happens.
I really appreciate that. It's I'm not used to playing in settings that I make myself. Even my longest running campaigns have been playing in somebody else's sandbox, so it means a lot to hear that Autonomic feels lived in. So
it does, and I will personally recommend it a lot because it is. You're exactly right. It is all ages in that it has a playfulness and like a fantasticalness element to it that is easily hook. It hooks you in no matter like what age you are. You make a thing that I like, and I want to make sure that I get that on microphone.
I'm just like embarrassed here. So
good.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, let's get into a game to dodge the embarrassment of making things that we both like.
Sounds good. So
this week we are playing Last Fleet. It is a powered by the apocalypse game of like desperate military action in the face of an overwhelming otherworldly like attack force. It is inspired by, Battlestar Galactica being a big inspiration for it, as well as Star Wars stories like the Rogue Squadron books. It's a lot of stuff that I really like and I'm excited to dig into.
Yeah, I've played no fewer than 3 different pilot-based powered by the apocalypse systems alone. So, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm really looking forward to it. I like the degree of risk. Mm-hmm. I like how it's upfront about what the system cares about and what it doesn't care about. Yep. You mentioned the Rogue Squadron books. Everybody's favorite, or not favorite, as the case may be, protagonist Corran Horn is a detective/investigator, and one thing that I think is very interesting about Last Fleet is that they're upfront about the fact that interrogation scenes won't necessarily net you info unless the NPC in question is interested in giving it to you, and I think that's a bold choice, and I think that having a lot of moving parts and pieces and shadowy stuff going on that you explicitly want to happen, as mm-hmm. opposed to a lot of mystery-based campaigns where the players can avoid conflict or mediate conflict is interesting and fun, and I'm really excited about digging into that.
I agree. I absolutely agree. So let's dive in. Let's introduce our characters and a little bit of the background of the setting that we kind of just came up with, mm-hmm. Which is essentially Earth is gone. Earth mm-hmm. is of no more. Well, what happened was in the not too distant future, the upper class, the 1%, in their pursuit of the most advanced technological leisure, continued to build more and more advanced holodecks and, recreational things, eventually building an AI that became so powerful and united that it undid Earth, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, Jeff and I have decided that this is definitely the kind of story which is an After-Earth style tale where the excesses and largesse of the rich, I think in this case, they wanted to create some kind of virtual reality pleasure dome or holodeck style thing. As you can imagine, the thing that they created grew too powerful, and ultimately Earth became completely ruined by this alien civilization.
The Renders. They are
Renders.
Perfectly, they fly through space in perfectly spherical ships, and they are obsessed with creating perfection, with creating, as they see it, an aesthetic perfection, which is why they fly through space in perfectly spherical ships. They are liquid metal constructs. They are obsessed with symmetry and design and making things flawless. And if humans are known for one thing, it is our flaws, and so therefore they have removed humans from the equation.
And one of the things that we decided is that this particular alien species has pretty prodigious combat capabilities and infiltration capabilities, but they're often hamstrung by psychological things like mm-hmm. an obsessive pursuit of perfection. So
yeah. Which I know we've talked about it, but now I need to throw out the detail of there's a very nice, appropriately enough, there's a nice symmetry where I think one of the ways that they get that the Renders get tripped up when they are impersonating humans is they become overly pretentious. Like there's that pursuit of perfection. There's that pursuit of like aesthetic pleasure. In that way of like,
not to mention pedantry, right?
Yes.
Even for humans, they're incredibly pedantic.
And there's it's that vibe of we could have made them look like anything, but we made them look like us. That is rich people created this thing, and in impersonating us, they often take on the most
Obnoxious traits.
Yeah, they take on that obnoxious attempt at culture that is often the sign of pretension.
Mm-hmm.
That is very good. Anyway, so we find ourselves on the we didn't name our capital ship.
How about the Spike?
The Spike is good. So we're on the Spike. The Spike is the central hub of a small fleet of transport ships, which are all connected by large walkway sealed tubular platforms. Essentially, one ship with about half a dozen other transport ships connected by these large walkway tubes.
Mm-hmm.
We are the last surviving remnants of Earth, people explicitly of like marginalized and oppressed backgrounds who fled Earth as things were getting bad because, well, the rich people are going to destroy us if we don't.
And I think it's important that we fled before the actual catastrophic event happened, because had we fled after or as it was happening, the ship would be populated with rich people.
Yeah. We got off the planet while the getting off was not good, but could have been worse.
Right.
So let's introduce our characters. We'll say how we're related to each other, and then we'll play out a little bit of the scenario.
Okay. So who talks first?
I will get into this first. But I appreciated that. Axel Derringer, call sign Shotgun, is an Aries, which is somebody who is a hothead, someone who is a pleasure seeker. You are a creature of passion, whether it's work or play. You throw yourself into it with a lack of restraint that can get you into trouble. You go where angels fear to tread and cross lines that others balk at. Axel, his pronouns is he lives his life a quarter mile at a time. Axel is, in fact, both fast and furious. He is the star pilot on board the Spike. I mean, if you need a fighter, he's your fighter. If you don't need a fighter, well, he's going to give you a fighter. Like it's very much he is very much the kind of guy who has a hammer and sees a lot of nails whenever he's approaching a situation. Hence the name Shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't pick the name Shotgun, but he really, really likes it. So tell me about your character.
So my character is, he's known as Commander Sunshine. That is his rank, but it's, commanders don't need nicknames, but it's just easier to refer to the commander this way.
Sure.
His given name is Brat Gearbox. He's got wavy brown hair, green eyes, and asymmetrical dimples, which is important. It's one reason people trust him so much is because of the asymmetry in his features. In fact, he's so good looking that sometimes people forget what his actual facial features are, and people will tend to describe how Brat Gearbox looks with using those three ticks. He exudes this warm aura of compassion that on paper seems incredibly suspicious, and then you kind of just cannot believe how warm and charming this person is once you're in the room with them. He's so caring and compassionate that he has a tendency to sometimes forget that hard choices need to be made with limited resources. And he's definitely a people pleaser who can sometimes get bogged down by trying to make sure everyone in the room is happy, which is something that is a tough get in the military, and even tougher in a true democracy where everyone is equal. So
I love that. I love that a lot. So the last thing we need to do before we lay out our scenario and dive in is we're each going to pick 2 relationship questions. This one of them should apply to us and the other should apply to an NPC. So we'll either create one NPC and both relate to them, or we'll have 2 NPCs kind of going about that'll kind of connect back to the various factions that we've created. And then we'll also kind of know how we relate to one another.
Okay, so the first thing we're doing is creating an NPC together, or are we just trying to answer the relationship questions first?
Throw out a question that you want to like explore in play, and then we'll decide if that goes to the other player or to an NPC.
Cool. The first question I want to answer, Brat, is who fears I'll lead everything into something terrible?
I don't think that's Axel. I think that's an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Axel doesn't like you, but I don't think that he doubts your ability to lead. I think that feels like a good relationship that we'll kind of lay out in a little more detail, but I think that feels right to me.
Okay.
So I kind of think this feels like an NPC. Do we think which of the 4 factions that we laid out? There are 4 factions within the fleet that we've laid out. There are the Rounders, who are a group of engineers trying to find a linguistical balance between us and the Renders, who are trying to like find that connection to like maybe build some kind of a peace or truce. There are the Walkways, which are the people handling the logistics of transporting supplies between ships. The Edges, which is like the People's Defense Force, the militia that is actually like in charge of keeping us safe, and the Voice or Voices, which is sort of the governmental structure, which is a true democracy where everyone has a voice and a vote.
So the way I'm thinking about this is that there are 2 axes, and the Rounders and Walkways are opposed because attempting to study the Renders and attempting to devote scientific research and resources to understanding them is probably directly oppositional to maintaining these energy expensive and kind of quality of life focused bridges, because human life becomes easier when you devote energy to easily traveling between ships. But on the other hand, if we're going to do anything about this war, we need to devote time and resources to the Rounders. Okay, so I think that's one oppositional relationship. And then the other oppositional relationship is between the Edges and the Voice. The Voice is a giant, as Jeff mentioned, a giant government body where everyone has an equal amount of time that they wish to speak, if they wish to speak, and everyone has an equal vote, and it's purely majoritarian, up or down, the way they decide things. And then on the other hand, you have the Edges, which is by necessity a hierarchical organization that is devoted on trying to keep people alive. And it's important to note that this particular hierarchy is not a military, it's a militia, which means it's kind of disorganized, and almost none of the people aboard the Spike came from influential military positions. So they're really feeling out all of this as they go along, and there isn't a whole lot of legal stuff or norms to fall back on. So
I almost think this could be, if I could throw out a suggestion.
Sure.
This feels like it could be someone like within the Edges that thinks that you are too
friendly with everybody.
Yeah. You're not you can't be counted on to make that hard choice because you're you care about people too much. How does that feel to you?
I love that. Why don't we talk about your the relationship questions you want answered, and let's put this in the same NPC. I think we can make that work.
Okay. I want to... there's a question here that is, who do I figure is going to get us all killed? That feels very good for this. Of, like, there is a military... There's, like, a general within the Edges that is absolutely the, like, we are going to burn their ships and, you know, like, that is... everyone on board this ship is now part of the military and is here to destroy this threat.
So kind of a tie type, like a Salt tie type.
Yeah.
Cool. I love that idea, and I think they could also be logically the person who doesn't feel like I can make the hard choices.
Yep.
So they think you're a hothead and I'm a person who can't make the tough choices.
I almost think so. The question here is, who do I think is going to get us all killed? It almost feels to me like they would love me. Like, as someone that is willing to, like, ignore orders and like, complete the mission no matter what.
No matter what the Voice wants.
Yeah, it feels like that Edge general who is like, we're going to destroy this threat no matter what, is going to look at me and see, like, the best weapon they've ever had. Which I think is a very compelling relationship.
Cool. So which question does this person answer for relationship questions?
This person answers my question of, who do I figure is going to get us all killed? So
they respect and like you, but you don't feel the same way about them.
I think that they are. I think, as someone that is noted that is chaotic and dangerous, I think I see them as chaotic and dangerous.
Cool.
I think they are, in some ways, they are what I fear I could be.
And that's why you hate them, because you're running away from them.
Yeah.
And they're high ranking in the edges, right?
Yeah.
So what's their rank, do you think?
Is general a high rank? That feels like a high rank.
General is definitely higher than commander, which is what I am, so...
Yeah, let's go general. We'll go... Cool. We need a cool name, quick. Let's go Desmond Kodo.
That's pretty cool. General Desmond Kodo. Okay. And so that answers the relationship question of who do you think is going to get us all killed, and who fears I'll lead everyone into something terrible.
Yeah. All right, one more question.
Who resents my social position?
I think I should be where you are. Socially, not necessarily in a logistical way. I think I respect your position within the edges, but I think I should be the star.
Right. And it doesn't you don't think I should be sitting in a cockpit, but you think you should get more credit.
Yeah.
Cool. And then which of the questions do you think that you have applies to me?
Are you more interested in the question, who do I have a rivalry with, or who thinks I'm out of control?
I don't think I have a rivalry with you because we're not interested in the same things.
Okay.
I think thinking you're out of control makes sense.
Yeah. Because I think in some ways I very much am.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to take one relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll come up when we want to interfere or aid each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I guess with that, we're ready to dive in, and with that, I want to ask you, as my co-GM, what's the situation that we're like immediately dealing with? I think it should be like military themed, since we sort of are all military-esque characters, and like that seems to be like the core of the conflict, but I don't know if I necessarily want it to be a fight scene just yet.
I think we've received intel from the Rounders that there is a planet which might have scanning technology that can help us find renders quickly.
Okay. I'm into that.
And it's the kind of thing where it's far enough away that if we jump and there's nothing there, we're putting everyone at risk.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's really good. I think, so I think I'm gonna frame a scene where I make a demand immediately, which is, I think Kodo is calling you into a room.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kodo has like made several orders that you're not aware of and is now like pulling you into a room to basically ensure that you act on them.
Got it.
A little bit of of casting for this. I'm picturing Clancy Brown is immediately where my head goes.
That's hilarious because I was picturing Superman as Commander Sunshine.
All right, very good. Very, very good. I think we have a long shot where the two of us have like a friendly conversation just so the audience picks up on that.
Yep.
And I think Kodo calls you in and is immediately you're in an what is a refashioned interrogation room, except there's like a hollow map on a table.
Right. So I think one of the ships is former law enforcement cruiser.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of like stripes on the walls and very kind of like big, bold, authoritarian type design work around like the sets here, and that lets us know that we're on the hammer, right?
Right.
Calls you in and is like, listen, I'm sure you've heard the Rounders reports. I'm sure you've heard the intel by this point.
Sir, yes, sir.
I want you to know I'm issuing the order to jump, and I'm issuing the order to pull back the bridges.
The camera focuses in, and you see like a twitch on Brat's face, and he says, as neutrally as he possibly can, "If you think that's best, sir."
Do you not think it's best?
Permission to speak freely, sir?
That's why we're here. And I think he snaps his fingers, and like the cameras shut off, like the security cameras shut off.
Decor or no decor, sir?
That's entirely your call, Commander.
Hearing you say Commander, I was ramrod straight in posture, and I relax a little bit, and I say, I don't think that's the best idea, with all due respect.
Let's hear it.
Such a jump. Well, first of all, the meeting that we just had at the Voice made clear that there's a considerable faction that's concerned about being able to maintain our walkways if we commit to such a fuel boost.
And yet, as you know, the vote was to majority ruled that say would fall to the military, that say would fall to the edges.
Of course, sir, but the edges are there to serve the people.
I understand that. It kind of sounds like you're trying to call someone out.
I think it is. How? You know what? Yeah, I think I am trying to call someone out.
I think it sounds like you're trying to call them out.
Call out. I'm trying to find that move.
Well, there it is. Call someone on their shit. It sounds like you're trying to call someone on their shit. So I'm going to ask you to roll plus hard.
Roll plus hard on a hit. Tell them what their problem is and what they need to do to convince you otherwise. All right. And my... I have a -1 in hard. This will be fun. All right. So I'm rolling. 6. I have a 5, so it's a miss.
Okay. So on a miss, I'm going to... So what do you say? What do you say that does not get the job? That does not get the job done? Does not get what you want?
Well, sir, the code's... he's not going to say sir. Well, Des, the consensus we'd need to build in a situation like this. And then I assume you just cut me off immediately.
Yeah. We're not in the business of building consensus. It's consensus that is going to drag our heels in the mud long enough for the renders to roll over us like the metal balls that they are. Surely you understand that.
I do understand that. That's also not why any of us left Earth, sir.
I'm going to ask you to mark some pressure.
Okay.
As I think what happens is he's like, listen, he's like, well, thankfully, our position, were our positions to swap, then maybe I would take I would listen to what you had to say, and I would hop step and follow orders. Our positions are not reversed, and I'm counting on you to do the same. Your issues have been taken under advisement, and we will seriously consider them before we make the call to roll back the bridges and make the jump. But in the meantime, I need you to get with the walkways and make preparations so that when that call comes down and he sits very hard on that word when, we're ready and the spike is ready to make the jump that it needs to make.
There's another twitch on my cheek, and I say, sir, yes, sir. And I snap a sarcastic salute and about face and leave the room.
So I'm going to ask you to take some pressure.
Okay, and I start at 0. Do I start at 1 pressure or 2 pressure?
We start at, I believe, 1 pressure.
Okay, so now I'm at 2 pressure?
Yeah. Let me see, where do you want Axel to be as this is happening? Set up a situation for Axel for us.
I think Axel is drinking in the pilot's cantina.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he even went to Voices.
I don't think he did. I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
I think Axel likes being given orders. I think Axel doesn't really is willing to like do what needs to be done and is waiting for the orders to come down to him.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, because if he disagrees, then he likes the moment where he gets to like lash out about it.
Mm-hmm. So on purpose, let's see how to convey this in a visual storytelling way. So the fastest route back to my quarters involves taking the space bridge or taking one of the walkways. But I wend my way in past the pilot's cantina, and Brett walks right by it and then stops short, turns around, and then walks into the pilot's cantina. He's greeted by a bunch of people. He's fairly popular within the ranks, and he gets free drinks, but he doesn't drink, obviously. So he sends a drink over to Axel, and is kind of looking warily to see whether or not he can sit down. He knows Axel. He's not the biggest fan of Brat, so he wants to kind of get an opening or make sure that it's all right before he sits down.
And I think Axel feet up on a table is, beer in hand, and is like, Well, what brings sunshine down to where the cockroaches crawl?
Uh,
I'm just needling you. Pull up a chair.
I pull up a chair and I say, cockroaches don't like sunshine.
That's the joke.
Yes, very, very funny. Very funny, Lieutenant.
Thank you. I worked really hard on it.
There's a long silence, which you can feel free to cut in. And then Sunshine opens his mouth and closes it and then clears his throat. I didn't see you at Voices today.
Oh, you're never going to see me at Voices. I don't, it's 147 people all saying that the air conditioning is too cold, the heat is too hot, and it's never going to change. So what's the point?
Well, maybe if it were 148, it might.
Yeah, maybe. I doubt that, but sure, we can all have fantasies.
Got some new orders from the general.
Do you now? Where are we going? What are we blowing up?
And I look around. I guess I'll make a cursory check to see if there's any listening devices or anybody particularly interested in the conversation the two of us are having. We don't openly talk.
I think a few pilots come by and like slap you on the shoulder, really just underlining the fact that I'm the only one that doesn't like you.
Yep. Which, of course, the camera captures your resentment in this moment.
Oh my goodness. Worked really hard. I worked really hard on that cockroach joke. I really would wish that people will work with me.
I think it's the delivery.
Is it? You think it's the delivery? What was it? Too aggressive? Too sunshiny?
No, it was in fact the opposite.
Okay, I'm gonna, and he like starts to take out a notepad and is like, no, you're not doing this to me. What are we? I asked you a question.
Hang on. And Sunshine turns around, and he's engaged in an animated conversation, and it's one of the situations where Axel starts looking at his chronometer and waiting for Sunshine to be able to pry himself away from the conversation. It takes way too long, and finally, Sunshine has to buy the rest of the bar a round of shots in order to be left alone, and he ultimately turns back to Axel after an frankly rude amount of time.
Yeah.
And he says, well, it looks like we have a lead on the comm units.
Really? About damn time. So let's go. Yeah. Let's go get it.
Well, it means we'd have to shut the bridges down.
That ain't great.
No. And his tone gets more serious, and he realizes this is something that the both of them actually have in common for once, and he says, no, it's not. Which is why I wanted... And he realizes he's skirting dangerously close to what passes for insubordination here. And he says, which is why I wanted to see if there was something that could be done about it.
I'm going to ask you to roll plus warm to reach out to me.
Sounds good.
Because I think I am responding positively to your request.
Mm-hmm. That's something I can actually do. Hang on a sec. Let me look at my moves and see if there's anything that'll help here. Cool. So I actually think that charismatic will help here.
Okay.
When you advocate passionately for a cause, roll plus warm. On a hit, you're compelling. NPCs do the action you've called for within reason. PCs mark one pressure or reduce irrelevant loyalty if they don't do it.
Okay.
In addition, on a 7 to 9, someone is inspired to fanatical action.
Got it.
So I've got a +1 to warm here.
Cool.
And I will roll. Yikes. It's only a 3.
Okay. So I think what happens is you're laying this out. You lay this out, and like before you're able to really lay out your concerns against it, somebody overhears.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other pilots, we'll call her call sign Smash and Grab. Her name is Gloriana Festerbrook.
Okay.
Gloriana, Smash and Grab, she overhears this and she's like, wait, they want to pull down the bridges?
I look pained and I say, this is a hypothetical, flight lieutenant.
No, that's great. Like, that's a huge, that's huge. That's gonna be, and like, she kind of just starts to like slink away. and like starts to like, slink away towards a group of the other pilots, clearly looking like this is like a big moment for the Edges to like show what they're made of.
Brat gets up and says, what would your... I think flight officer is the best rank here. And he says, Flight Officer Festerbrook, I need you on cafeteria duty immediately.
Oh, okay.
He raises an eyebrow and says, immediately.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I'm going to present you a choice here and say, like, this'll work, but it will put you at odds with the other Edges.
Yeah, so I think, so I have two abilities. I have Charismatic and Followers. I think that Gloriana is one of my followers, but I am definitely using social capital here.
Okay.
In order to make this work. So what do you think? Should I try to make a charisma roll here, or is there something else going on, or does this just work, but it has consequences in the future?
I think this works with consequences in the future.
Okay.
I think she like slowly and kind of like suspiciously gives you a salute and like walks off, grabbing a beer as she goes. And like,
what happens when the commander gives you an order that's obviously intended to cover up something the commander's going to do, and you follow it, but who knows when you'll tell someone?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. She has that exact move, and I think two people follow her, like her like teammates follow her crewmates or squad mates follow her, and we see them start to talk, and like that news is gonna start to leak out a little bit.
I walk over to the bartender and I say, Odie, send Gloriana a bottle, will you, on my tab?
And I think that'll be the last thing we roll on for this scene. Is I'm gonna ask you to roll cover up, but not yet. Because I think Axel is like sitting back and is like has been chewing on something this whole time.
Okay, so you want me to roll cover up?
Not yet. I think we'll have that at the end of the scene to see what happens with Gloriana like later.
Sounds good. All right. So let's return to Axel, who is Han Solo style, still has his boots up on the.
So Sunshine, let me throw something at you. I figure we've got a few days.
Sorry to interrupt. What's your call sign?
Shotgun.
Shotgun. Okay, got it.
I think we've got a few days before. The logistics to pull up the bridges, to pull up the walkways is a lot. What if, for a couple days, one of the pond skippers. The pond skippers are like the fighter jets. They have like a small jump capacity. Maybe like they can jump maybe like a system and back.
They're shuttles, pretty much.
Yeah. They are shuttles that have like a turret plopped on top. What if a pond skipper disappeared for a few days?
Purely hypothetically speaking, what would this pond skipper disappear for?
I mean, theoretically, a pond skipper could make the jump, skim the surface of whatever planet we're jumping to, possibly recover some tech, possibly recover some resources, some crystals, jump back, get scope out the situation, and then maybe we don't need to pull back. Maybe, and more importantly, maybe a certain general has a little bit of egg on his face.
I look
hypothetically.
Down. Sunshine looks down at the water that he has in front of him, and you know when people take like a big swig of water, like it's a huge drink?
Yeah.
He does that move. There's something inherently ridiculous about trying to pull that off with water. As someone who doesn't really drink now, it's you look a little silly when you have water in your hand. Period. But he does this, and then he says, "Be a tight jump, though."
The tightest. You have to be a hell of a pilot to pull it off.
I meant in terms of fuel calculations. We might not even have room for combat maneuvers. There might not be a window for that.
I mean, that's exactly. You'd have to be a hell of a pilot to pull it off.
And we wouldn't be able to use the ship's computers to calculate the jump.
You'd have to be the greatest pilot that ever lived to pull it off.
And I'd have to do... Someone, he catches himself, would have to do these calculations by hand, on a notepad or something, instead of using the flight logs.
You do love your notepads, don't you?
How else are you supposed to take notes?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you never take notes, it's never an issue.
Point. So, hypothetically speaking, where would we find this pond skipper?
Well, we would have to... I mean, we would have to talk to... we would have to talk to Roy, Roy is like, Roy is a member of the walkways that, like, oversees the specifically the ship's bay in the Spike.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have to talk to Roy. God, I hate talking to Roy.
It's fine. Roy owes me something.
Oh, well, hell, all right then.
I don't know what. I wish I'd written that down. I'm sure it'll become clear as we...
We'll figure it out.
So I think we can scene transition unless you want me to cover up, to roll cover up at this point.
Roll me cover up real quick, and then we'll have... Because I think the transition will be like what is happening in the cafeteria when Gloriana gets there.
Awesome. Okay, so I rolled 10.
All right. Let's see. When you roll so smooth on a 10+, they buy your deception as long as no clear countervailing evidence appears.
Great. So here's how I think it manifests. I scribble down a note, and then discreetly slip it into the label of the bottle that I send over.
Mm-hmm.
And Gloriana is cleaning up after cafeteria duty. She pulls out the bottle, the note falls out, she looks at it, and then we just cut away from that.
Yeah. I love it.
All right, so we're heading to... How do we get to the shipyard?
I think we follow Gloriana, like we follow Gloriana, we see that happen, and then the camera follows through into a lift, which goes down into the shipyard, where we see just a ragtag assortment of different ships that have been, like, patchworked into fighters and transit vessels and all sorts of things, as we see...
There's a sign on the door or on the side of the wall that says, "Your lack of planning is not urgency to me," and a bunch of other passive-aggressive mechanics notes, as you can imagine. Yeah.
And, like, Roy is sitting directly underneath one of these signs, like, looking at a clipboard, not a data pad. Like, he has a clipboard with papers.
Mm-hmm. So Sunshine is walking towards him, and just before he gets into visible range of Roy, he does this weird thing where he, like, pokes his dimples absentmindedly, and gets closer to Roy, and claps a hand on Roy's shoulder and says, "Roy, you remember that thing I did for you, right?"
It's been a long time. It's a little fuzzy.
Yeah, I mean, a couple cycles is a couple cycles. But no, that was a legit question. I can't remember what I did for you.
Oh, I thought that you were... Oh. I mean, it has actually been a while. But, I mean, I do remember you, that shipment of steel plating was really, really valuable, and you, requisitioning it from the edges was a really effective... I mean, I know that there were a lot of military uses for steel plating,
Great.
A lot of good things for armor plating.
My friend and I need to use a pond skimmer, and it needs to be off the books. How's that?
I love it. I love it a lot. I think Roy just, like, stares at you for, like, a very long time.
I look down at my chronometer, and then I look up again and say, well, it's just that things are about to happen, and it would be great if they didn't. And I look a little pained.
How long?
I look at the calendar on the side of the wall, and then back at Roy and say, "You weren't at Voices either, were you?"
I am at every Voices. I take, and he shows out a different clipboard that is, like, covered in notes. Like, there's notes on the clipboard, on papers attached to the clipboard.
Great. So you know that the edges were voted decision-making power over the next jump.
Of course. It happened. Oh my god. I have got to start taking those handwriting classes. This is
It happened 47 minutes into the 98-minute meeting.
I look over at Axel. They're not always that long.
That sounds like death.
Yeah, so it was 70 to 65, and with a lot of people abstaining, and let's just say I know where we're jumping next.
Okay. That doesn't answer my question.
I look at the window where you can see the turbo lift between the ships going up and down, and I turn around and I say, I turn away from him and I say, I'm not permitted to disclose privileged information, but you planning any trips to the central spike lately? Or rather, are you planning any trips to the central spike in the near future?
I'm not planning a trip to the central spike.
I would move it up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Great.
And as for your other question, how much fuel does the pond skipper? How many days worth of fuel does
I think taking into a jump into effect, I think it holds about 5 days.
Cool. And I say, if we're lucky, 5 days. If we're not lucky, we're not coming back.
I can give you 3.
Great. If we're wrong, it won't matter.
Okay. I think that works.
And then I turn to look at Axel, who I assume is looking like hungrily at a bunch of armaments that are like being taken apart.
Axel
in the garage.
Axel is just kind of like standing, arms crossed, like back to you both, just like looking around, and has walked up to one of the pond skippers and is chatting with it.
Mm-hmm.
And is just being like, hey, what's up? What's going on with you?
So he's hitting on a ship?
Yeah.
Delightful.
Yeah, he is 100% like, he is full on picturing himself as Spaceman Spiff of like all the cool things he's going to do in this pond skipper.
So I walk over to Axel, and I say, looks like we're good to go.
Oh, cool. Great.
And
you didn't see any of that.
No, of course not.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I see what people see in you now. I get it.
Thanks. I straighten up my hair, and try to wipe some of the traces of grease off of my uniform. And I say, so looks like this is the one. Do you want to meet back here in like, I don't know, 200 hours or so?
That works.
So I head back to my quarters, and then how do you want to take us away from this?
I think what happens is, like, I watch you leave, and then I see, like, 3 other pilots, and I'm like, all right, everybody, it's party time.
And then there's a montage of drinking, I assume.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to indulge. I am letting loose.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to roll plus raw, which is my +1. That is that's a 4. What goes horribly wrong?
Okay, well, you definitely get in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a little injured, and then on top of that...
So I'm gonna mark a pressure for that.
I think you're still a little drunk when we have to jump.
I'm gonna mark 2 pressure.
Okay.
I'm gonna mark 2 pressure. I think this is a 2-person vessel. I think you're here with me on the jump.
Yeah. Because I have to do navigation.
Yeah. Because, like, if we start using the computers, they're gonna know.
Exactly.
And I think the other thing that I want to add to this is I think that Kodo has caught wind of, like, the party that is breaking out and knows that something is up but doesn't know quite what it is.
Right. I think that works perfectly. So I think the next cut that we have is us in the shuttle speeding away from the central hub that is the constellation of ships. And we see, like, a tracking shot where we see, like, the... let's say 7 or 8 different ships that are connected to the central spike, and there are all these elevators, and there's like this space harness sort of that's around the spike, which is that central ship, and it's keeping all of the other ships together. So there's 2 structures here. There's the elevators that go between the ships, and then also this harness, which the ships kind of dock into so they can all travel together and conserve fuel. And because this is like a space thing, we see like a long, indulgent shot of everything. And, this is how we see the stakes and all that stuff. We see people going about their daily business and all that sort of thing. Just before you and I do the preliminary FTL jump.
Yeah.
So.
And I think a big part of that is, I think we see all of that, and then the beeping of comms starts as Kodo is calling in because he knew exactly enough to watch for when one of the pond skippers started to move.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take that, or should I? Neither of us have to.
No, one of us has to.
I guess, but I mean...
It's just that I'm in the middle of these calculations right now, and it could be very, very bad if I get this wrong.
All right. You got Axel.
Flight Lieutenant, what do you think you're doing?
Reckless joyriding.
Are you aware of the penalties of taking one of these transports without explicit authorization?
Yes.
I thought you were one of the good ones.
I am? So here's the thing, though. I really am.
Cease your current heading immediately and turn around, or we will be forced to disable your transport.
So here's the thing. Boss. Can I call you boss? I'm gonna call you boss.
You may not.
All right, here's the thing, boss. You can disable this transport. You can put me in the brig. You can court-martial me. You can dishonorably discharge me. And I'm gonna ask, and then this is really more of a question for you. This is really more of a question for you, Kodo. Boss. Where are you gonna be in your next operation?
There's calm silence, and Kodo says,
"Can you count on not having me on board?"
I don't wish to harm you, Flight Lieutenant, but a pond skipper is a valuable resource.
And I would say Axel Derringer. I would say Shotgun is maybe the most valuable resource you've got. I think I want to call him on his shit.
Okay.
Oh, that's an 11. Thank you.
Very nice. So
I think I'm calling his. I think what I'm doing is I'm telling him his problem is that like he can't afford to not let me do this.
Right.
And he has to either do it or openly and forcefully refuse and suffer the consequences.
Okay, so we see a shot of the two faces here, like looking at each other, kind of anime style. And Kodo blinks first. He gives an order to his aide, and you see some streaks of laser fire go towards your transport. But with your level of piloting ability, it's obvious that you're not actually going to get winged here. And you can easily dodge around it, but it looks honest. It looks like Kodo tried to retrieve you.
And I think the other half of that is it's going to make the jump because I think Kodo is taking me at my word that I'm just kind of recklessly joyriding. He doesn't know that I'm planning a jump.
Yeah.
It's going to make also jumping a pain.
The other thing we see is that we go down to, we see the sort of heads-up display that Kodo and his aide are working with, and there's a scan of the ship, and it reads 1 human aboard. And then we cut to the next, cut to the next scene.
So I'm gonna make the jump, which is I'm gonna thread the needle, which is an aerial flying feat, which is flying through a bunch of laser fire, making this jump with like only the papers that the notes that you've handed me. I'm gonna try to make this impossible flying feat. So I'm gonna roll plus raw. 7. That is an 8. That is an 8. So I make it by the skin of my teeth.
Okay, so this is rolling raw, and what's the maneuver called?
Thread the needle. It's an Ares move that lets when you attempt an aerial flying feat that others would find impossible. On a 7 to 9, I do it by the skin of my teeth. I'm going to gain 1 pressure, and I am going to ask you, the GM, how my action leaves us exposed.
So the way it leaves us exposed is our calculations are now off because of the ridiculous loop that you did. And while you successfully dodge all of the laser bolts, and it looks very impressive and very good, our exit vector is not what I had originally thought we were going to have. So I have to grab the notepad from you and do more calculations for how we are going to re-enter. So I start doing those calculations, and you're not even looking at me while this is all going on because of the pure joy of what's happening. And I start scribbling furiously, and I scribble furiously and start to sweat. And as I start to sweat, the camera lingles on me, and I blur a little bit.
And I am going to, as this is happening, I'm like, here we go, boss. I called him boss. I can't also call you. We'll figure it out. And I like hit it. I hit the gun, like I gun it. And we get the Star Wars, the dots turn into lines, we hit the jump, and we are in the atmosphere of this planet. We're not, like, above it, we are tearing through it. I think we're flying through space, right? I think, like, we get, like, a whole sequence of, almost slapsticky pilot shtick, dodging trees, and I think as this is happening is when we're having like, a heart-to-heart of, like, so, they're gonna be none too happy with you back at the Spike.
That's true. But we have a bigger problem.
What's that? And I think that's, maybe, is that when we start to see you ripple?
Yes. I ripple. And I think what happens is you look at me, and then you look back at your instruments, and then you look at me again, you do like a double take.
Alright, well, yeah, that's an issue.
I didn't want you to find out this way.
Well, I mean, there were probably better ways to find out.
It's never the timing that you want.
No, not really. But
I'm not a traitor.
You say that
to us or them.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the facts and I'm not sure I buy it.
I take out my sidearm and I toss it to you.
Oh, okay. I think that's when the ship goes down.
Yeah.
Like I roll it and like it's still functional, but it's gonna if and when I jump back, like this pawn skipper's done.
Right. So, oh no, sorry. I take out my sidearm and I toss it to you.
Right. No, and I mean like in catching it, like I let go of the controls, and that's
I grab the control.
All right, great.
And then try to steady us.
All right, great.
I'm not great at it, and my arm starts rippling.
Okay, good. I like that. I'm gonna say roll me plus hard as you weather serious harm in doing this.
Okay. So I just roll hard.
Yeah.
Okay. It's great that I'm a robot nanotech thing that's bad at weathering things.
Yes.
Okay. 5, so I miss.
Okay. You feel the full force of it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the full force of it. You are out of control. I think you have fully lost the ability to like render yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we both
So I'm at 2 pressure right now. Does my pressure go up?
Yeah, I'm going to say mark 2 pressure.
Okay, so
I'm going to mark
4.
the pressure as well, which also puts me at 4.
Awesome.
And I think we're staring against each other. I think I've got your sidearm. I'm looking at you and I'm like, I pointed at you and I just say talk.
I open my mouth and then I look at the instruments. And I say, you might want to keep one eye on the dash.
It's fine. Talk.
It's really not. You can't survive this crash. I can.
I'm going to thread the needle again, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Because I'm gonna pull off another impossible flying feat, and like shit, I got a 12. I am like I've still got my gun at you. The ship is like spiraling, and I just like punch it. I like smash it, and just let it kind of, and it like you see it like skip up, and then I grab it without looking at it, and I like force it to land.
Cool. Actually, can I amend the force it to land thing? Could you instead have us break Atmo, and then you, through sheer piloting prowess, put us in orbit so we're not using fuel and we're coasting?
I love it. Without taking the gun off of you, and I'm like, now, with that taken care of, talk.
You really are the best pilot we have.
Goddamn right I am.
So, this communicator.
Yep.
It's not what you think it is.
Okay.
The Rounders, they think it'll help find us. You know, it'll broadcast a frequency that makes us revert to, and I go liquid, and it's shocking. Like, it's a shocking effect, but it's like Alex Mack style or Terminator style. I briefly become liquid, and then I reform, and I say, they think it'll liquefy us and force us to stay liquefied. It's worse than that. We'll completely break down.
And I'm like, the gun is now shaking as I'm going to ask you to reach out with warm.
Okay.
Or charismatic, either one.
Awesome. I'll use charismatic. I mean, that's a warm roll anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a plus. When I'm at 4 pressure, does it affect my rolling?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It might, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to say no.
Okay, I got a 10.
All right, perfect.
So here's what I want to do.
Okay.
I want to grab the gun from you, and I want to shoot myself in the head.
Okay.
I do that, and nothing happens. I reform, and I say, I could have killed you anytime I wanted.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I'm like, I start to laugh. Like, I put my hand is still in, like, the trigger position. I put it down, and I start to laugh. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not any happier about this than you are.
I can't imagine you are. Crud. See, here's the question. Sunshine. I can still call you Sunshine, right? Like, that hasn't changed?
Whatever's easier for you.
All right, Sunshine. The question that I'm facing is not whether or not I trust you. Frankly, not really my concern right now. The question that I have is, do I trust Kodo? Do I bring this thing back and put it directly in his hands?
You'd be signing our entire death sentence.
Which, I mean, would, from a pilot, would be great.
Is that really what you want?
Is that really what I want? And I'm going to make one last roll.
Okay.
As I'm just going to, like, I'm sitting, I've turned back around and I'm slinking in my chair. And, like, we started to drift into the atmosphere and we see the tower, and we kind of flash back just to see a small patch on my uniform that is one, like, a Rounders patch.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm opening fire on the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a 4, that's a 5, that's a 6. Could you support this?
Yes. What do I do to support it?
Roll me support. Well, we're going into battle, so let me ask you if one of these 3 things is true as an officer. Do you have a good view of the battlefield or direct comms with our people?
Yes.
Okay. Are we trained and prepared for this sort of conflict?
I am.
And did you know the details of this in advance?
This was my plan, yes.
All right, so you've got 3 holds, so you can spend one of the following. Support me by ordering to assist or saying how you've trained them for this eventuality. You can order forces to redeploy and erase one segment from the battle clock, or order a swift reaction to a problem and negate. So you could immediately give me +1 here.
Okay. So when I see that, so let's set this up.
Yeah. So we're flying towards the tower, and like my hands, I'm like doing the debate of whether or not to pull the trigger, like at this moment.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are coalescing around this. So as you're debating whether or not to pull the trigger, a bunch of liquid metal droplets surround the tower, and it looks like they're trying to destroy it themselves really, really quickly. But you can see this flashing happening on them, and it becomes clear that you've seen this maneuver before. And we flash back to an obstacle course training initiative where I was putting you through this asteroid field with a bunch of obstacles. And you hear my voice over the comms, and what I say to you is, you have to remember that, above all else, the renders will self-destruct rather than be captured and subject to imperfections. when you see this flashing pattern of lights, it means that they're about to explode. Take evasive action immediately, and make sure that you do not hit any of the globules that result. And I look at you, look at our vector, and I take the yoke, aim at one of the renders that looks like it's about to explode, and fire.
They would rather die. They would rather die than let us kill them. There's got to be something there. And I jam, and like I take like your hand in mine, I jam down that trigger, and like it just the thing goes up. So I choose two of these options, and this will be what we leave it on. Like, we take collateral damage, we see the ship spiral, and we are exposed in that now there are globules coming towards the ship. And like I get out just in time. We both step out. There are globules coming towards the ship. The thing has just gone up, but I've also just opened fired on it. And I'm like, so is this the family?
I grimace. I shove a breather helmet on you. And then I get outside of the airlock. And the last thing we see is sunshine turning silvery, and then coating the outside of the pond skimmer.
And that's a wrap. And that's where we leave it. That was really good. That was so much fun.
That was a ride.
That was great. Oh my god. I'm smiling ear to ear.
Space is fun.
Space is so much fun. Pranks, thank you so much for coming on the show with me. This was so much fun.
This was great, Jeff. I loved playing with you, and I would love to play something with you, even if it's not for recording. We should just like do something for fun. I know we were kicking around the idea of like a superhero game. I think that could be super fun.
I'm down for that. I'm 100% down with that. So, real quick, before we wrap up, where can people find you and your work online?
Yeah, so you can find my Twitter handle at RogueTLDR. That's, Rogue as in Rogue Squadron, and then TLDR, all one word. And then you can find my work at nevertellmethepods.com. That's where I talk for way too long about Star Wars. And then you can also find my other show, which is the Autonomic Podcast. You can find that at autonomicpodcast.com or just by searching Autonomic. And I recently wrapped up production on Adventure on the One Shot Network, so you can find some of my work archived on there too. And then I still plan on popping up on streams and doing other things on One Shot, so you can probably find me there as well. I'm a Chicago local, so yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a delight, and now we're going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show. Take it, future me.
Thanks, past me, and thanks again to Pranks for coming onto the show. That game was incredible. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about Last Fleet and its Kickstarter, as well as more information about Never Tell Me the Pods and Autonomic. I really can't recommend them enough. And be sure to follow Pranks on Twitter at RogueTLDR. Then while you're on Twitter, follow us at Party of One Pod, then like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/partyofonepodcast. Join our Discord community at bit.ly/partyofonediscord. Talk about the show, gritty, professional wrestling, whatever you want to talk about. You can also financially support the show by going to patreon.com/JeffStormer, coffee.com/JeffStormer, or paypal.me/JeffJStormer, because Jeff Stormer was taken. And one last thing you can do to support this show is by supporting the other podcast that I produce, All My Fantasy Children. All My Fantasy Children is a character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast on the One Shot Podcast Network, powered by you. Every week, my best friend Aaron Catano Saez and I take a listener-submitted prompt, we spin it into an original fantasy character, and we populate a shared universe, one story at a time. New episodes drop every Friday at oneshotpodcast.com. Party of One is produced and edited, as always, by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. All music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Megaran, featuring the D&D Sluggers. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates, press coverage, or about coming onto the show as a guest, you can email me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it for me. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance, and as always, party on, everybody.